Hello and welcome to Random Offense. I am Ethan Strauss. We are joined by the preeminent sports media critic slash reporter in the universe that is one Ryan Glasspiegel of Front Office Sports. We, ladies and gentlemen, have a meaty show for you. Many sports media topics. And you can also zoom in, arrive, ask a question for us. I hope we don't spend too much time, Ryan, on the Micah Parsons trade, but I will be tempted to. It's going to be hard to resist. Yesterday, shocker of a trade went down. The Dallas Cowboys traded their superstar, some would say, pass rusher Micah Parsons to the Packers. The Packers gave back 2 first-round picks, defensive tackle Kenny Clark, and Ryan, you're a Packers fan. Let's set that aside. Let's put on our little objectivity hats. The media coverage of this is bizarre to me. It's bizarre. I know that we're not a football-y, meat and potatoes, sportsy sports show, but am I crazy in watching the coverage? And while admitting that the Cowboys are a mess, while admitting that Jerry Jones, though a fantastic actor, based on his cameo in Landman, perhaps has gone senile and is not running the team well, that there's an unfairness to how the deal has been assessed in media. And perhaps you are here to explain to me why it seems so many media members are just going crazy, just pumping up Parsons and crushing the Cowboys. And I'll stop monologuing eventually, Ryan. I will give you the chance to speak eventually, but let's get some art up there. Let's get that CBS story from the NFL world about this as a historically terrible trade for the Cowboys. Trace, can we get that up on the screen? Can the people see it? Yes. Inside the anonymous NFL reaction to the Cowboys, it says something like, this might be the worst trade ever. I'm seeing that across the board, Ryan. What the hell?
Kenny Clark is a great Packer, but it seems like his best days were behind him. He's approaching 30. He makes a lot of money. We've seen Khalil Mack brought a bigger trade haul when he went to the Bears. We've seen off at left tackles go. Laramie Tunsil got a bigger draft haul than what the Cowboys got for Micah Parsons. And it is just it's crazy how one-sided the media reaction is, and I have some theories about it, and I guess we'll get into them right now. So Parsons is represented by David Mulugeta of Athletes First. And yes, I'm a Packers fan, but I'm skeptical about this agency and this agent and doing deals that are not always great for the teams. They that Mulugeta did this Deshaun Watson deal with the Browns, which has been an albatross, and like every other NFL team has refused to go along with this like 5 year fully guaranteed deal that Watson did with the Browns. This Tua Tagovailoa deal with the Dolphins, I'm actually not sure if he has Mulugeta or a different Athletes First agent, but that doesn't look team friendly. The Dak Prescott deal with the Cowboys was Mulugeta. He is making 60 million a year. Usually we see the quarterback market reset all the time, but it has not reset to pay people like Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson more money than what Dak is making in Dallas. And so it's a tricky thing. And I think that I've said this on the show before, but I analogize Mulugeta to Rich Paul at Clutch. But the
Mm.
difference is when we see people in the NBA gassing up a Clutch media client, all of a sudden everyone's socials like you're a Clutch merchant
Yeah.
and things like
Clutch
that. Like
media.
whether
Yes.
whether it is like fair or not, that's the reaction. We don't see that reaction with the way that the media touts Athletes First clients, and it's a little bit surprising to me given how much bigger the NFL is than the NBA. You would think that that would like start to be caught on to.
I completely agree. It reminds me of the Sapir-Whorf idea that if you give a name to something, you see it. We have named Clutch and Clutch Media Influence and have the association with LeBron. So when it happens, we see it. NFL, we don't really have a name for it. It's hard to say that agent's name. I don't even want to say it right now because I feel I'm going to stumble all over it. And so it's not being remarked upon. But I do think it has informed, along with how player empowerment might have gotten purchased with a lot of people in sports media, a puffing up of Parsons. And look, you guys can react to this fairly and say that I am not an NFL expert. I never covered the NFL. I didn't. And if
Did
you
you
want
play
to,
in the NFL?
shockingly, no. I know it surprises people. I get asked that all the time. And if you want to believe the likes of Benjamin Solak and Ben Barnwell, all the
Bill
Bens out
Barnwell.
there who are experts in this field, by all means, I feel there's a misalignment here with the Parsons reputation and the reality. I say it from a Niners perspective. He had 2 playoff games against the Niners. He had an additional highly hyped regular season game against them. He didn't do a damn thing. And that is part of a pattern for him. And it would make sense. I don't think it's just small sample size. He's a smaller defensive end. He's linebacker sized. And I think against bad competition, perhaps he feasts, but it seems like it's been famine when it's been the bigger games and when it's been playoffs. That your Packers traded for him. Do you remember him doing anything against them in that playoff game? Do you have any sort of solo memory? Because I do not.
My
And
wife
so
went
when,
into labor with my third kid during that game, so memories of it, the football part of it, are kind of hazy.
I
But
don't believe that for a second. I think you were paying attention to that game, but we're going to set that aside. It's okay. I'm just looking at some of the coverage of him and I'm wondering, is it fair to say this is agent influence? I know that sounds unfair. I don't know Greg Rosenthal, the analyst of the NFL Daily podcast. This might be unfair, but he says Micah is the best pure pass rusher to enter the league in the last 20 years. If you're going to make this move for anyone, it's him.
he's
He
not
doesn't
better
have a
than the Watt brothers. He's not better than Myles Garrett. He's not probably better than Trey Hendrickson. What's
not
the
better than Bosa, I will say
Aaron
locally.
Donald? Like Aaron Donald's the best. So
What
you've
if we just turn
also
the rest of the show into this, just naming guys? I don't know. I know, but I'll just throw one stat out. I'll throw one stat and just one observation. He doesn't have a top 5 finish in QB hits. His best season was his rookie season. He is bad against the run in a league that is transitioning into more of a rushing attack. I take it that your Packers are advantaged by having him, and he might be a missing piece for them on third downs. But I can't help but feel it feels a little bit like of agent to athlete influence. And I don't know if I'm being unfair because I'm not an NFL journalist.
Well, yeah, I mean, as I said, in the duration of this deal, I would expect TJ Watt to be better than Micah Parsons. I would expect Myles Garrett to be better than Micah Parsons. And you know what? The Carters, Jalen Carter and Abdul Carter, are on a rookie deals. And I mean, especially we've seen Jalen at the NFL level. I think that Abdul is about as can't miss of a prospect as you can get. Those two I expect to be better pass rushers. So they're doing this like sleight of hand by saying that Parsons is the second best quote edge rusher
Mm,
to Myles Garrett right now. So I guess that means like TJ Watt isn't an edge rusher, but like it's about hitting the quarterback. And should Micah Parsons be making like 3 times as much as Saquon Barkley? Like there's just a
no,
difference making aspect, and like there's only so many ways you can pay people. But the NFL salary cap is kind of fake. It's just like a made up number. They restructure these deals and it's like this saves $12 million of cap space. And you're like, how? I don't know, it just does. And so you like the Packers have this advantage that they've really never used before, which is that they don't have a owner who needs to extract money from the franchise to pay for his own life and like several generations of his family life in the case of some of these legacy franchises like the Steelers, the Colts, the Bears. But like so there's just like a way where you can like front load cash flow and it just never catches up to you. The Eagles take advantage of it. Like if there is a strict salary cap, there's no way that the Eagles could have this many great players all at once. So I think the salary cap is kind of fake, but I also think that the way that like Micah Parsons is getting gassed up and the Cowboys are getting killed for not paying him this while also getting 2 first-round picks back, it's very curious.
It is curious. And I'm going to read a comment right here. I'm going to turn my head to the comment reading from Thomas. Why do so many sports journalists sigh and huff at fans for being pro owner instead of pro player in disputes? Shouldn't it be intuitive that the fan just wants each the optimal outcomes for their team? If I root for a team, it is in my best interest to have players sign team friendly deals rather than player friendly deals. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would add there is a misalignment here. Again, granted, the Cowboys are a mess. Granted, Jerry Jones is senile. Granted, if they are in a rebuild, some of their recent moves don't make sense. And granted, it is typically better to do a trade like this before the draft than after the draft. All that said, this to me is obviously a smarter outcome. Trading him right now and not paying him all this money than if they just paid him a ton of money on a team that can't compete for a Super Bowl. So what does it say that if they paid him 47 million a year, they would have gotten less criticism, Ryan, than doing what they did? What does that say? I find that interesting.
I don't know. It's all kind of bizarre. I do think we should pivot to media now. I know it's your show, but I think
How dare you? You
we
take your
got our
hands
share
off
of
the
football
steering
content.
wheel. You don't run this. No, that's a good idea. So what in media? What are we going with? Is it Doris
Uh
Burke? What is it going to
we
be?
want to go Russillo first or reckless speculation first?
Let's go Russillo because that's your big news break. Your
All right.
glass break. Your
My glass.
glass break, as you've branded it. You broke the story, a shocker in media. Ryan Russillo, just great radio guy, great podcast guy, paired nicely with Bill Simmons, leaving the ringer for Barstool.
Well, he's
Why
not
did
leaving
this?
for Barstool. There's a distinction there. I'll get into that.
Okay, well, explain it to us all because I don't know and you do. What is going on here? People are emotional about it.
So yeah, he's been at the Ringer for 6 years. Like, I think that if you look at like the podcast charts and you separate out athlete shows like New Heights, um, it's been for the last like 5+ years. It's been Pardon My Take, Bill Simmons podcast, and Russillo at the top of the charts. Now, there's some like distinctions there where like, Stephen A. Smith is obviously a huge talent and people can watch him on TV. Colin Cowherd is on TV, radio, podcasts. So, whereas like the three that I mentioned, you're only going to find them in the podcast and YouTube and digital space. So, but like if you look at those charts, it's those three that have been consistently at the top of them in the non-athlete category. So a talent like this doesn't come to the market that often. And Russillo, this decision, so he's going to be launching his own digital production company. And then Dave Portnoy and Barstool Sports, which he's the whole owner of, are investing in it and kind of taking like a management role where they're going to be handling all of the social and video and podcast feeds. They're going to be handling the ad and sponsorship sales. They're going to be doing merch. I don't know if there's touring, they'll handle that. Like, so Russillo has this like sweet spot that he is developing where he's going to be owning the company, but he's not going to have the pressure of managing it. And so he's going to be like basically the primary equity holder in his work. And I assume that he's going to develop other concepts around it. Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. And he has ownership of this stuff forever. And it's just like, this. You left legacy media, not that Ringer's legacy, but you left a steady paycheck where you were an employee because you felt that you could drive a substantial amount of value on your own. Now let's make this, no offense, to a bigger scale. That's what
How
this
dare
is.
you? No, it's true. But continue. You were saying.
Right. So there's just like it's a fundamental difference between being an employee and owning your own business. And if you have the ability to command an audience scale like he's going to be able to command, and even if he has to start the feeds over, I think his audience is relatively portable. And then you look at like the other factor in this is video. Barstool and like other companies like Omaha Productions are just great at developing big scale in video. And the podcasting, it started as an audio medium, but it has now evolved to the point where I think a lot of the bigger stars make more money on YouTube than they actually do via like the audio feeds. Like you look at a Pat
Mm.
McAfee show for an example, and how he was able to license his show to ESPN for like 30 million a year or whatever. Um, the Barstool has just been incredible at developing these new video feeds. Like they did this Stool Beach House ongoing reality show. It's been on for 3 weeks. They already have 90,000 Twitter followers. They just have these systems for developing scale of video that is very attractive to him.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think Ryan is somebody who has aspirations beyond what he's done. I hope I'm not telling a tale out of school here, revealing something that I shouldn't reveal, but he once sent me a script that he was working on for some.
He's talked about it when he left ESPN. He said one of the reasons that he wanted to get out of that day-to-day radio grind and do something that's a little bit more flexible like podcasting is that he wants to be a screenwriter.
I mean, good for him. And perhaps this is going to give him the flexibility the beachhead required to do something like that. I'm interested. I'm just continually fascinated by charisma and why people resonate and why they're big time. I'm thinking about Russillo and why he's amassed this sort of audience. I think that you tell me, I want your theory on it because I've enjoyed Russillo for a long time, ever since back maybe 15 years ago when he was doing this thing called Tales from the Couch and just watching these league pass games and giving his very niche observations on the NBA. And I think what I've come up with, it doesn't explain the entirety of his talent, but he's a normal freak. And
Uh-huh.
what I mean by that is this: most people who grind like he grinds, most people who watch as much film as he watches, as many sports as he consumes, they're nerdy weirdos. I could maybe even describe myself as an effete nerdy weirdo, but they don't come across like a regular guy. He comes across as somebody you'd want to hang out with, even by even though by his own explanation of what he does, he doesn't have a whole lot of hanging out. I believe that's part of the magic of Russillo. Or do you have a different theory?
It's a lot of that stuff. There's that. There's that rare combo of the fact that he is literally obsessed with basketball and football and watches them until the end of the earth so that he can develop informed opinions. There's the coming across as an everyman, even though he is by all accounts, he's going to St. Bart's and doing a travelogue. He's very
Mm.
wealthy. He has a very soothing broadcasting voice
Great
where
pipes.
uh I think like if you're gonna look at like the two radio people who have like just the most unbelievable voice, I would go with him and Mike Francesa, where it just seems like they were put on this earth to be audio broadcasters.
Huh. That's a very northeastern perspective, Ryan. That's an interesting one. I
Then the
might
other
submit Cowherd in the Rushmore right now of that
Well,
that group.
Cowherd,
We could do it.
he has the same thing with Cowherd, where if you were to listen to their show and transcribe it, you're gonna find that they speak in just perfectly formed paragraphs as broadcasters, the two of them.
Mm,
They have their thoughts so organized and composed in their head that it's almost like a writer with an editor delivering it. And they have the perfect cadence where they pause, where the period should be, new
mm,
paragraph. Like it is it's like they're reading a book on tape, but they're just saying it off the top of their head. And it's a skill like, Howard Cosell had that. And it's like also a timing thing where they don't fixate too long on one topic. They know exactly when it's time to pivot.
yeah.
And those are just things that I don't know if they're innate or they happen with like the amount of hours that those two spent doing live radio, but they have it. And so he's got all of that. Plus, he had the ESPN distribution, the Bill Simmons Halo distribution, his own talent, and so he's a
No,
megastar. Like the people who put together this deal, his agents are the call her daddy Alex Cooper agents. They're the people who also put the Barstool Fox deal together, and so he's working with people who know how to set this stuff up.
those are some excellent points. The thoughts about the broadcasting style, I think it is rare. I think it's been underappreciated. I think it was almost popular in sneering, Gawker adjacent, Gawker children's circles to look down on Russillo and dump on him for some reasons we can get into as we look back at the Russillo Simmons era. But there wasn't enough appreciation for this guy is a megastar. He does have a massive audience. He's successful for a reason. It's not arbitrary. It's real. But as we look back at the Ringer Russillo era, can we get the fan cam? Can we get the little send off? Can we
The
get that?
memes were so unbelievable. Like, don't be sad that it's over. Smile because it happened. Like the amount of memes that I saw that were just like absolutely hilarious about this news, and a lot of people are really going to miss that Simmons and Russillo Sunday show if it doesn't happen anymore. I mean, I don't. It probably won't, but I don't know. They could,
Yeah.
but
Can we get one of them up there? It's not going to be enough. But Trace, can we play one of these little fan cams for Russillo sending him off? Do we have that art? If we don't, it's okay. I can awkwardly switch to something else if we can't pull it up. No, okay. So maybe we'll be able to pull it up, maybe we won't. It's okay. Do you remember though, as long as we're reminiscing, the crazy stampede from some people within the Ringer and outside of it to try to get him out of there during the 2020 madness? I'm just throwing that out there. Do you remember that?
yes.
That
It
was
was like
insane.
a terrible day for the country, plus like the NBA draft redraftables or something. And then he also had a take about I don't
The
remember exactly.
unions, the
Tweets are
union thing.
terrible.
I think he
Yeah.
said something about unions, and this was such a trend within all these media companies that people would get together and they would be all about the union. I'm not describing this like I've got firm thoughts on unionization or I'm anti-union, but it was very clear to me that there was a cohort within media who didn't necessarily understand the precariousness of their station and were approaching it as though they worked in a factory in the Midwest making cars. And it also just became an identity. I think a lot of people wanted to put a fist emoji up on Twitter or whatever. And Russillo, for a moment, became the focus of this hysteria in this ugly way. I remember there was a New York Times article that seemed fairly targeted against him. It got really crazy. And it's funny to look back on that as a blip because he's built this massive career with Simmons. And back then, in that moment, it just looked like he was, I don't know. It could go either way, but he's gone through the journey. It's years later, and now he's out on the other side.
Yeah, I don't know how to add to that. I mean, I think it's gonna be a big move for him. Obviously, it's a big move. I think it's gonna be it's gonna be very interesting to watch. I think that he should be able to rebuild these feeds fairly fast, and then I'm interested to see how the video component of this goes from here.
I get the sense that Aaron, who has a hand up, is going to have a media theory. That's my sense. I think it's a media theory. I think he's going to tell us that we're missing something about our assessment of this. But let's hear it. What do you got for us, Aaron?
I mean, look, I think we're definitely in the Bravoization of sports, where the sort of Bravo shift that we had since the early 2000s with reality TV. I mean that we're at the full sort of throttle of that, but with that comes this really almost this sort of strange parallel world that's separate from the sport, even though it involves those personalities. So you have this sort of voyeurism of all of the people, but people won't even understand the thing they're doing, right? They won't know the position they're playing. They won't understand the sport too well because it just becomes the sort of gossip narcissism factory that, is that we like to have because, people want to see, human train wrecks and frailty. That's seems to be part of our modern mission or some of it. And I really I do question how much air is in that tire over
Mm.
time. And then also um, when you're talking about launching all of these separate pay networks, how much spend is there really in there
Mm.
for real subscription? Because if people are the Ringer and Barstool, and now you have another one, plus you have ESPN, plus you have, pretty soon, and I mean for the hardcore sports fan who's a who's become the Bravo sports fan, maybe. But is that 30 million deep as a population? I don't think so. I think it's a smaller population. I mean, if they can somehow cross over personality wise, and I just to be really blunt here, there seems to be a lot of monoculture in that environment, right? You just seem to have a lot of the same kind of dudes talking about the same kind of things.
Mm.
And I do think that's where the, call me daddy kind of thing was different. And you don't seem to have a big version of that in sports. Um, which could then go and attract other audiences. Because at the end of the day, if the pool is just the same sports heads who are buying the same number of subscriptions, and now you're adding one more.
Well, he's not selling subscriptions. He's going to
Well,
be on
Yeah.
YouTube and Apple and
yeah, but
Spotify.
in the end, it's going to have to turn into some. I mean, everything can't just be third-party sponsorship, right? In the end, he's going to want to build a paywall. That's how you
No,
get paid.
I don't know.
no,
Okay. We'll bounce
no way.
Aaron out here and we will discuss this idea. I don't I think there's just a difference between subscription people and advertisement people. And people are often a mix of both. But in a way, being really popular liberates you from having to be a subscription person. I don't think Joe Rogan is a subscription guy. I don't think Russillo is like me, some boutique subscription type operation, right? I think he's more in the category of the we'll come
Yeah,
up with whatever
he
term, but
wants
we're
to
coming up
he
with something.
wants to reach as many people wherever they are. But I, the TikTok universe, I had no idea that this had spread to TikTok with the Simmons and Russillo memes until someone took a screen grab of it and put it on Twitter and was like, I saw it on TikTok. So it's just the video component of this is where Russillo can grow his audience, basically. I think Aaron's question was like, how does it make sense for him to migrate platforms? Like, where is the growth going to come from? And I think the growth here comes from more people seeing him on video. And I think video is easier to sell ads against than audio in this day and age.
Damn, Teutonia World's got a quote right here that I'm uncomfortable to even say aloud, let alone think publicly. They effectively, and I think by they he means the Ringer, traded Ryan Russillo for Lowe. So maybe the question is, does Zach Lowe still have it? Capital I, capital T. Weird for me because I know Zach a little bit and I've had conversations with Ryan. I wouldn't say that I know either especially well, but I'd feel odd saying, I don't know if Zach still has it,
This
but
was this wasn't a trade. I think it's natural to think that like Simmons could have like was a GM and made this as a trade. It did not inhibit them from trying to keep Ryan. This wasn't a matter of um Bill and Ringer decided that he was through. This was a matter of like he saw an opportunity to go and be an entrepreneur. And
hmm.
so I don't think the two are like mutually exclusive. There was room under the cap, so to speak, for both of them.
My cop-out take is that if the NBA still has the juice, then Zach Lowe still has the juice. That's really what it comes down to. If the NBA is still something people want to know a lot about, he's the guy for that. And if he's not writing as much, and I don't know what the future plans are, that's just been a very natural transition for people who have been star writers, and writing to a lot of people is a grind. And so they transition to the podcast space at a certain point of their career, such as, and I've heard that you shouldn't have segues, Ryan. I've heard that segues are corny. I've heard that segues are wrong and useless. And we can just talk about what we're talking about. But when I see
But
a segue, I can't avoid a segue, such as Dan Lebitard made that transition, Ryan. Dan Lebitard once was a star writer who became an audio guy, principally, primarily, nearly exclusively. And you've got something recklessly to speculate about, I heard. I
this
heard
is a
rumor of this.
segment we like to call reckless speculation. I don't know if they play
Ah,
music with that or not. And I don't
yeah.
know if I got the exact wording right. But
Mhm.
my reckless speculation is that the 20 plus year partnership between Dan Lebitard and Stu Gatz came to an end this week.
Boom.
And so let's rewind a little bit. Since Dan Lebitard founded Meadowlark Media, its presenting sponsor has been DraftKings. Um, for a while, like for a couple years, Stugat started to fade away and not be on the show as often, but he would come on and he's still in the title, even as we speak right now. But then a few months ago, Barrett Media reported that he was, quote, stepping back from Meadowlark and was going to be launching his own program. He had, over the last several months, he has launched his own program, and he's had a number of people from the Lebitard universe, past and present, on his show. He's had Bomani Jones on his show. He's had former producer Mark Hochman on his show. He's doing it with Izzy Gutierrez, who had a show in the Meadowlark verse. And that was like, kind of interesting. It's okay. He's borrowing from the same people. But this week, or maybe it was last week, I don't know, it's sometime in the last week or two, he revealed that FanDuel is now his presenting sponsor. And so it would be like one thing, kind of, if he had like MGM or Hard Rock or Caesars as his sponsor, but FanDuel and DraftKings are the two at the top of the game. They have been battling since even before gambling was legal, when they were both daily fantasy sports companies. I use this analogy a lot, but they're the Montagues and Capulets of sports gambling. They hate each other. I don't see any way that Stugatz can have FanDuel as his presenting sponsor and go on this show that DraftKings pays like upwards of $15 million a year to sponsor. I don't see how it can happen. And it seems like he did that as a way of like severing the relationship.
It's so hard to know in that universe out there in Miami, the Lebitard universe, because they do the pro wrestling thing of meshing the show with what's real, and you don't know what's a work. I'm using your terminology, Ryan. I don't actually know any of these things. I don't watch wrestling. It's hard to know. It seemed from the outside like there was tension there. And for those who do not know or didn't listen to the Lebitard back in the day, Stu Gatz is the butt of so many jokes. That's the role that he plays. They present him as the dumb, knee jerk sports fan that Lebitard can intellectually play off, and they make fun of him all the time. And that's his role, and that's what's been successful. But you just have to wonder if after a while, does that get old? Does somebody get tired of that sort of role? I wonder that from the outside, and I have no idea if it informs a speculative fracture, but it would make sense, wouldn't it?
And by the way, I did ask both of them. I'm like, is this over? And neither of them responded to me. So it's not like I didn't try to do my journalistic due diligence before my reckless speculation, but I just think that I don't see it. Maybe, look, one day they'll be on the air together if they live long enough, etc. But for now, as long as Stugatz has FanDuel as his main sponsor, I don't think that he can go on Dan's show, which still has Stugatz's name on it. For how long, we don't know.
My God, what is going on with these middle-aged male breakups? These titans of sports
Two of them,
media.
really. Like, I mean, this one, they were together for 20 plus years. Like, that show started on 790 The Ticket in Miami, which, by the way, was a station that like Stugatz built basically from scratch as like the program director. And then he pairs up with Lebitard and really rides his coattails to massive audience and financial success through ESPN and beyond. And it is sad to see it break up like this. I think it's broken up, and
Well,
it's sad. I
okay,
know it's sad. I think it's broken up.
do we think that he's ridden the coattails, or is Stu Gott's real name John Wiener a talent in of himself?
He is a radio genius, but I think that if he wasn't involved with this concept, I don't know if like what there's it's very I guess I was probably being I regret saying that he rode the coattails. I don't think that that's fair. That wasn't a fair term to use, and I apologize for that if he
Although
somehow
he would
hears.
definitely we would definitely say it about an athlete he was talking about. He wouldn't mince words if there was an athlete playing alongside a more famous athlete. But I think these sort of tensions, even if they're toyed with for the delight of the audience, and even if somebody tries to supplant the ego, they eventually do burble to the surface. I was recently going down the rabbit hole of the Opie and Anthony breakup, where the Opie of Opie and Anthony wasn't regarded as funny. He was more somebody who moved the show along, and that was his role, and it made them rich. It made him rich, but I do wonder if after a while that's not enough for a lot of people.
These radio partnerships are very hard to sustain. TV too, but radio is even harder because it's such an intimate medium. And Mike and the Mad Dog had everything. They broke up, and I don't think they lasted as long as Dan and Stu got to. 20 years in a radio like duo, especially one where there's like an imbalance of power like this one,
Yeah.
where it was for a long time it was just the Dan Le Batard show. Then they eventually added Stugatz to the name. Dan has made like as much money as Stugatz has made. Dan has made more throughout the duration of this, and so yeah, you combine that like think we're like you're the junior partner in a program, and as you said, constantly the butt of the joke, and you wonder like, is there something more to this world?
Yeah. Yeah. I that would make sense. We're recklessly speculating from afar. The Meadowlark operation is interesting to me. I know it's good business for me to pretend I know more than I let on. But even though I've got friends involved in Meadowlark, I rarely ask about it. Semi because I suspect there are people over there that hate me or think things about me. So I almost don't want to know more. But I don't know what's going on over there. I don't know what the idea is. Frankly, I don't understand their target audience. I know they've got affiliations that make sense. I don't exactly. I know that Pablo Torre, he's sold his successful podcast to the New York Times / Athletic, whatever that assortment is. But the whole idea of Meadowlark, I just don't understand what their targeted fan is. And maybe we will conclude or we will reach the final lap of this topic on this. Stugatz, in a way, represented Joe sports fan. He represented the type of person who the Dan Le Batard show in its earlier incarnation might appeal to. But over a period of time, not so much. Over a period of time, it became frankly political. It became ideological. It became less about sports. And I just wonder if the severing of this relationship almost represents the severing of the Le Batard platform from its audience, frankly.
I don't know. It's a deep question. This is an important conversation. I'm glad we're having it.
Or
But
do you mean that, or is that a
no,
joke?
that's a
What is that?
joke from the show. That's a
This is
line
our
they
breakup,
say when
folks. We're not doing this anymore. Not
that's
with
what
that sort of
that's what
snippiness.
that's what Stugatz would say whenever like the conversation was like too heavy and he didn't
Oh, I
want
thought he would go, I thought he would yell
it's important.
cannonball, and they
Hey,
would
it's
play
an
the
important conversation. I'm glad we're having it.
Well, see, I missed that because I frankly stopped listening after a certain time. So they developed their own inside jokes, but it appealed to me less over time. And I'm not saying that John Wiener is fracturing from Levitard over politics, but I do think the politics represented the show deviating from the focus of somebody like a Stu Gatz. So,
Yeah.
okay, Doris Burke. Doris Burke time. Are we going to talk some Doris Burke?
No
Doris
segue there,
Burke,
just
buddy?
hard pivot.
Hard
Sure.
pivot.
You
No
go,
segue.
you go, then I'll go.
Yes, Titonia World says the politics became overbearing. I would agree with that. Um, Ray is posting under my name, I think accidentally, in the chat, and that's okay because he's such a smart guy that I'll just take credit for his takes regardless. I wrote something about Doris Burke being demoted by ESPN, ABC as the lead, well, as one of the lead announcing crew. Tim Legler has been officially elevated alongside Richard Jefferson, alongside play-by-play legend Mike Breen. Now, this move had been rumored for a while. It leaked a little bit out in June, back in June during the finals, and Rick Carlisle did a press conference in defense of Burke. I find it to be an interesting move. I feel for her. She's a nice person. She's competent. She's well prepared. She's well respected. And also, gun to my head, because I'm always honest with the audience. I try to be as honest as I can be, despite whatever personal feelings. I think a lot of the audience got sick of her and didn't want her on that lead broadcast. And so the move makes sense. What do you think of all this, Ryan?
It's a tricky thing because they had three different booths in the last 2 years after getting rid of Jeff Van Gundy and Mark Jackson. And I really don't want to relitigate that at this point. But they started out with Doc Rivers. He leaves mid-season to go coach the Bucks. Then they put JJ Redick in. He leaves at the end of the season to go coach the Lakers. Then they put Richard Jefferson in last year. And I think all three of those booths, the three-person booths, you can't say three-man because of Doris, the three-person booths, not one of those three had a great crisp chemistry that was reminiscent of that long-standing Breen, Van Gundy, Jackson trio. And so they're not going to get rid of Breen. They just put Jefferson in. And so if you're going to shake it up, she becomes the odd, not man, person out. Um, and I think that I think she's more suited for a two-person booth than a three-person booth. It's rare that a three-person booth has worked in our lifetime. There was that Breen Jackson Van Gundy booth that worked, and then people loved I think it was Dan Schulman, Bill Raftery, and Jay Billis. I kind of like that Ian Eagle, Bill Raftery, and Grant Hill booth too, but that one works because Grant Hill almost barely talks. And so it's what in the course of like one of these broadcasts, when the play-by-play person has to narrate it and then the analysts have to split it, it's like a very tricky game to establish chemistry. And it didn't work in any of these three booths. And I don't know who you can blame or not. But Legler is like very good as an analyst, and he's worked with Mike McQuaid, who is behind the scenes executive at ESPN for I don't know 20 years. And so when organizations change, people get their own guys in there. And Mike McQuaid got a new position about a year ago. I don't know the timeline, but he got elevated within ESPN, and that opens up a thing where, okay, I'm going to get someone I'm comfortable with in this top spot. And I don't think that like Doris necessarily did anything wrong. Like she rose to great heights. These booths didn't work. They're keeping her at ESPN on an extension because when ESPN demotes people, they typically sweeten the pot a little bit with like extra years on your deal. That's something they've done.
Oh, so I was going the other way. My impression of ESPN is they promote you to a certain level. They ask you to save a property. And then when you don't save that property, they fired you.
Well, there's other cases where when like it's just something like is like so when Sage Steele got booted from NBA Countdown because her and Bill Simmons were not did not have good chemistry. And then they put Michelle Beto on there. I don't know if that was linear or not. Mito might not have been the next one, but when Sage Steele was off, that they gave her a very long deal because it's like, hey, this isn't something like you did. Just two personalities clashed and it didn't work. And so they've done that on a number of occasions, and this is one of them.
Well, one of my subscribers, House of Strauss, subscribed today, was saying, look, I think she should have the early morning Christmas game. I just don't think that she's a lead announcing crew person. I find that plausible. I hope she's not insulted by that, but I find that plausible that some people are more the auxiliary crew. And this was a situation, it did feel, I'll be honest about it, as I was when I wrote about it. The vibe has shifted. It did feel, you could say she was set up to fail. All these weird hodgepodge, three-man booth dynamics, three-person booth dynamics, whatever. Kind of a mess, but it's also true that they were very proud of having a woman on these announcing crews. They would announce it. They'd make a big deal about it. And there was no sort of backlash you could observe anywhere but the fringes to any of that. And then the politics of the country changed. The vibe changes, and it seemed as though right at the point that she had more scrutiny, that she was on these games that more people were watching, a lot of people felt more comfortable criticizing and saying, I don't like this. She's a homer for Boston. Why is she saying this about free throw merchant? All of a sudden, it felt like it was
she is
open.
right about that, man. SGA is just brutal.
Oh, yeah, it's true. It just felt like it was open season on her, and there were aspects to what happened in her career that weren't strictly speaking just about her. And let's get to Tonio World. And we'll get Ray too. I want to know. He's got the hand up. We haven't had him on. I want to see what he's got. Are you there?
Yeah, Cameron.
Yep.
Yeah, it was just mentioned on a couple. So I guess you did mention a couple of critical things. I guess my thought of Doris Burke is that I couldn't remember at all her saying anything critical of any of the players at all. So it's not so much. She just always kind of read as vanilla, whereas like Mark Jackson and Van Gundy at different times made people want to tear their. You liked it, you liked the catchphrases. Other times you wanted to hate them, and it kind of there's this question of whether, as a male sports fan, if you want to sort of hate, especially the color guy, half the time. And it just didn't seem like there was any value added at a certain point having Doris Burke basically be vanilla. I think I don't know if maybe Glass people knows this. Like on the rewatchables, there's a whole category about kind of mocking the Doris Burke, Serpy. You have a game. There's a whole category at the end of the show where they choose to mock an announcer, and like half the time it's them doing a Doris Burke impression of you had a game, Mr. SGA. You made the play, and so I wonder. I do think I think a lot of the things that Doris Burke now is kind of running into, the kind of unfortunate kind of sexist stuff, is emblematic of the vibe shift. But it also just kind of seems like, and this goes back to the Zach Lowe question, that maybe these were just more kind of 2016, 2017 NBA celebrities, and now people don't really care in the same way.
All right, that's very provocative. We'll get to Tony out of here, which, it's not an insult to him at all. We're just moving the show along because that was an excellent comment/question. Now, I didn't think about that, about the necessary hatred, Ryan, in the booth. I didn't really consider that. And I think there was almost an exchange. There was a deal where Jeff Van Gundy would never criticize a coach for anything. Anything. A coach could do any crazy thing, and Jeff Van Gundy would hold his tongue and he would refrain from critique, but there was more honesty about the players, and there were more opinions about the players. And I think with Doris, I don't think he got either of it. I think it was just all positivity, and it was too much.
Like I said, I think it just comes back to chemistry, where these booths, it didn't feel like they were all on the same page at the same time. And at some point, like McQuaid is like, I feel comfortable with Tim Legler. I'm gonna put him in here. I tweeted this, and I want this to be out in the world. Okay. The white whale, no pun intended, of NBA media is Steve Kerr. I think any of the three partners, ESPN, Amazon, and NBC, they'll all deny this. You say it right now. No, we love our booth. We love Reggie Miller, Jamal Crawford, Stan Van Gundy, Richard Jefferson, Tim Legler. If Steve Kerr leaves the Warriors and then wants to be a color commentator on games, I think any of the three networks would make space for him on
Yeah.
their top team.
Yeah. They would boot Legler, which wouldn't be fair. But, well, actually, the Steve Kerr question's interesting. I thought was excellent.
Might boot both of them. They might just make it Kerr and Breen. I don't know.
Kerr and Breen. That's a vibe shift, if you know what I mean. That's something that they would not do a few years ago. But Ray has his hand up. Let's take a question from Ray. I want to know what he's got. He's been waiting. He's been patient. What do you have for us, Ray?
My question, how much do you think fan backlash had to do with this move? I write for a New York Knicks publication.
Mm,
I'm a longtime New York Knicks fan. I can tell you
sorry.
unequivocally, I know, me too. We've gone through some very tough times. I can tell you unequivocally that Knicks fans, by and large, not every last one of them, but by and large, Knicks fans can't stand Doris Burke.
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't like it.
She's perceived as a Boston homer. I don't know what that's rooted in. I don't know what the background is as to why a lot of people feel that way. I would say this. Here's the tricky part, Ray. How much did fan backlash play into what happened? I would say that it did, but not just because of the backlash itself. My assessment, I felt as though her announcing changed, and I thought, could be wrong, but I thought that some of the backlash that was burbling up and was now a bit visible when before, I think it's so hard for us to imagine what it's like for famous people or people who they're praised immediately as their entryway into fame to deal with criticism. I felt like it seeped into the announcing. I felt like it wasn't her best work. I don't agree with Ryan. I'm breaking up with Ryan on this podcast. That's what's happening. I don't think it was just about the chemistry. I think it was about some of this stuff. Ryan, what do you think?
It's an important conversation. I'm glad we're having it.
Oh my God.
No, I don't know. It's sure. I think that that she probably was it's very difficult to live your life in the public eye, and when you're like in person, everybody is just like so friendly and just so excited to bask in your presence, and then you go online and you look at your mentions and it's just nonstop like this person is heinous and they're terrible and DEI and everything like that gets hurled at anybody in the public eye, and it takes a very thick skin to adapt to that. And she had been the recipient of that not just when she was on the top team but throughout her career, because I think there's a certain subset of people who just don't want women announcers, period. And so she has had to endure the brunt of that for as long as she's been announcing men's games. But when you get anointed to the top team and you're doing the NBA finals, the scale of it is just going to increase logically. So I think that there probably is something that she became sensitive to the backlash, and in trying to adapt to it just lost some of her vivaciousness. Is that the right word?
I think that's the right word. The verve, the energy, the je ne sais quoi of a Doris Burke. They're all terms we could use here. And it reminds me what you said of a story Steve Kerr once told me about announcing games. And I apologize, people, if you're with kids listening to me, you might want to shut this off or cover their ears because of the story I'm going to tell you. It's because I think Steve Kerr, Doris Burke, they both played. And if you play, you know what your product is. And you've got teammates to tell you and everything else. Versus if you announce, you're looking for feedback and they're going on social media and seeing it. So Steve told me about announcing games, and the first time he went on Twitter after he announced a big game and his experience of it all. And the first comment that he saw was, "Hey, Steve, great job announcing the game." And Steve felt all puffed up. He had a big smile on his face, and he thought, yeah, you know what? I did do a good job. Then he read the other comment and they said, "Oh, excellent. You just crushed it. Love having you on the call, Steve." Oh, he felt so good about it right there. He was
There's
just
a
up in the
twist
clouds,
coming.
up in the clouds. And then the third comment he read was, "Hey, Steve, I could barely hear you announcing that game with LeBron's cock in your mouth." And he suddenly felt a flash of anger, and he observed that you could be torn asunder after being puffed up. So, yes, it's hard to deal with backlash when your product is speaking and people's subjective take on how good you are. I think, especially after a career where you were doing something physical. And we'll,
I have
yeah.
a separate Steve Kerr aside. Has he become less outspoken about the ills of the world and society? I know it's the NBA offseason, but I feel like we haven't been seeing him get up on his soapbox and, wag his finger as often.
Trump's converted him, man. Trump is he's convinced him.
It seems like he's gonna come out. Like, imagine what if
What a
Steve
heel
Kerr
turn.
showed up in a MAGA hat?
Oh my God, it's hard to even picture, but that would be fascinating to see such a thing. Just to watch everybody react to it. My God. Oh, the content at House of Strauss if that sort of thing happened, but it's not going to happen.
No,
I don't
that's not
think it
gonna
is.
happen. But like there this vibe shift. It isn't it, like that. Some of the people who would have been leading the charge in the opposition. Not what's the damn word? I'm not opposition. The revolt. No,
Resistance, right?
resistance. That's the word I was
Yes.
looking for. Thank you. That's why you're the king.
Oh, of course.
Some of the people who would have been leading the resistance have stood down, and he's one of them.
Yeah. Has he stood down? I think he stood down to an extent. I remember 2022 finals speaking out against guns. I assume he's going to do things like that. Guns, that's a topic, tragically, that there's a history there. And I feel like there aren't a lot of people who are going to say, shut up when that happens, at least in the mainstream. But if he is hired to call these games, I think it's very much dependent on the personalities involved. I think a lot of these things are when it comes to politics. I don't think it's just about practicality. I think it's who's running NBC, Amazon, all this stuff. And would they work out an agreement or render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, where you call the games, you don't talk politics? I don't know. I don't know because he's an interesting case of somebody who's got the name ID, somebody who's, I think, excellent on a call, and they want to have him. But there's this other thing.
How many
Post Bud
rings did
Light,
he win with
post
the
Target.
Bulls?
What's that?
How many rings did he win with the Bulls? 5?
Yeah, he wasn't. I think not 5. I
He
don't
at
think it was
least has
5.
3.
He's like 3 because he was on the
He
Magic
he at the
before.
very least has 3 rings as a player and 4 as a coach.
Well, he won with the Spurs too.
Oh,
So yeah.
so like yeah, he's approaching double digit rings if he's not there. And so that's the thing that none of these top analysts have nearly the championship pedigree that he does.
Yeah. No, I think he would do a great job at how it would be handled politically in this era. I think it's subject also to the whims. It's subject to if something abnormal happens. That makes a lot of sense to me. Teutonia, all these dudes would have to do is say positive things about America all the time, and then they could pontificate after a school shooting. You have to do both. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Aaron Reyes, Kerr has 5 as a player and 4 as a coach. So yeah, approaching double digits. I mean, 9 championships. That really gives, like, you look at what Fox did, where they just elevated Tom Brady, and like the way that Troy Aikman has this credibility with ESPN. And I know it sounds like
I
the
think
fact.
Steve would jump in at this point to say, "I'm not Tom Brady." He was always very deferential as a player. I think it's remarkable he had something to do with it, but yes, I'm stepping on your point just to say just before
As a
somebody
but as a
complains.
coach, he's got 4 as a coach. Like, I
Yeah,
mean, that's there aren't many people who have that. And so the it's a I think that when he is done coaching the Warriors, whenever that may be, I in my crystal ball see an NBA media shakeup on the horizon.
oh my God, Legler, watch out! You finally get the brass ring. it's like an episode of Succession where you think you're gonna have it, it's taken away. I'm rooting for Legler. I don't even know Legler. I just hear from people who work with him, and I think he is an excellent
He is
analyst.
so good at it.
It's been a long time coming. So that would be, you know what this would be? You know what this would be, Ryan, to follow your analogy as we wind down the show?
Well, I didn't.
This,
It wouldn't necessarily be Kerr going to ESPN. Like, maybe they get outbid by NBC or Amazon.
I know, but I'm saying that this would have the flavor, per your own metaphor, not per your own analogy, this would have the flavor of Greg Olson getting replaced by Tom Brady, with Legler as Olson, the excellent analyst who's not as famous a player, getting replaced by.
I think that's a fair analogy were it to happen.
Were it to happen, if we're speculative. Well, hey, the hour is up, but we didn't hit a couple topics. Should we just quickly
Should we
hit
do
on
Belichick
something?
real fast?
Yeah, speed run Belichick. You want to speed run the Belichick? Yeah, what the hell's going on, man? His girlfriend Jordan Hudson is trademarking terms like gold digger. They're doing a documentary on the UNC. I just feel like the late stage of his career is manifesting itself in a wacky way that's different than, say, a Jerry Jones as owner or a Greg Popovich as coach. What's going on?
It's very bizarre to see him acting like this, because this was a guy who was like in total control. You never could have seen him outsourcing like this amount of his public persona to any woman, let alone someone like nearly 50 years younger than he is. And like now, he's the famously media unfriendly, and he is doing this Who documentary, which to brag, I broke the news on a few months ago. But
Glass break.
glass break. And so he but now granted, this is not some you know old school style HBO documentary where the chips fall where they may. This is one that he and Jordan and the UNC football program are in charge of the final content. And so this is not going to be some type of like tell all. This is going to be them presenting themselves the way they wish to be presented. I think, I mean, I would assume anyway, like but that's the case of like a lot of these documentaries now, where the subject kind of has this final say veto power, and you're not getting the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
I heard that's what the cowboy documentary is, that it's very much through the lens of a Jerry Jones. I still want to watch it. There's still time for me to research it all. I'll do my quick outro promo, House of Strauss Substack. I never promote myself. I got to promote myself. BCC chat, we talk about it in the chat. We're going to have more stuff coming. Of course, subscribe to Random Offense. You're probably already subscribed if you're watching this, but tell your friends. Ryan, what do you want to plug?
Tuned In Conference. I promoted that before, but we've got Adam Silver, Rob Manfred, Eric Shanks, Jimmy Pitaro, Jay Marine, who's the boss of Amazon Sports, Rick Cordella, who's the boss of NBC Sports. We have Noah Eagle interviewing Ian Eagle, and we have a debate between Stephen A. Smith and Clay Travis that's in New York on September 16th. My pinned tweet has a ticket link and a code for $100 off.
I might have to fly out there. All right. Thanks, Ryan.
Good
job by you. And we are done.
All right. Good talk.